The alarm bells rang through the massive ship called Aurora Prime. Red lights flashed in every hallway as alien soldiers ran to their battle stations. Something big was coming, and everyone knew it would not be good. Commander Jake Morrison walked slowly through the chaos. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor, while creatures with tentacles and scales rushed past him. They all looked scared. Jake did not look scared. He looked calm, like he was taking a morning walk back on Earth. Briefing room was huge. A round table sat in the center with 12 chairs around it. Each chair was different because each race had different bodies. Some needed chairs for 4 legs. Others needed chairs with holes for their tails. Jake's chair was the simplest one. There, it was just a basic human chair. Admiral Zexter was already seated when Jake arrived. The Kethany leader had blue skin and 4 arms. His large black eyes looked at Jake with curiosity. Zexter had fought beside humans before. He knew. They usually talked a lot during meetings. They asked questions and made jokes. But today, Jake just nodded and sat down. Other commanders filled the room one by one. General Vexka came in with her 6 spider-like legs clicking on the floor. Her people were great at building things, but terrible at fighting. Captain Mortek floated in next. His gas-filled body glowed yellow as he worried about the coming battle. The Thylurian did not even have solid flesh. How could his people fight anyone? Commander Yishan was the last to arrive. She had green scales and eyes like a snake. Her people were warriors, but even she looked nervous. When everyone was seated, the lights in the room went dim. A hologram appeared above the table. The hologram showed space. Stars twinkled in the darkness. Then red dots appeared. Lots of red dots. They moved across the star map like a disease spreading through healthy tissue. The dots were ships. Enemy ships. The Devak Empire. Admiral Zexter said. His voice was deep and worried. They have been moving through our space for 3 months. They have destroyed 17 star systems. Billions of people are dead. Jake watched the hologram but said nothing. He took out a small device and started making notes. The other commanders looked at him, waiting for the human to speak. Humans always had something to say about fighting. But Jake remained quiet. How many ships do they have? General Vexka asked. Her voice shook a little. Our scouts counted 847 vessels, Zexter replied. They are heading for the Kepler system. That system has 4 planets with colonies. Over 2 billion people live there. Captain Mortek's yellow glow grew brighter. How many ships do we have to stop them? 156, Zexter said. That includes support ships and medical vessels. We have maybe 90 ships that can actually fight. The room became very quiet. Everyone did the math in their heads. 800 versus 90. Those were not good numbers. Those were terrible numbers. We should evacuate, Commander Jean said. Get the people out while we can. Where can they go? General Vexka asked. The Devak will just follow them. They always do. We could surrender, Captain Mortek suggested. Maybe they will let some people live. The Devak do not take prisoners. Zexter said. They take slaves. The lucky ones die in the first attack. Jake kept writing on his device. The other commanders watched him, growing more curious. Why was the human so calm? Why was he not screaming about fighting to the death? Humans were supposed to be crazy warriors who never gave up. What do you think, Morrison? Admiral Zexter asked directly. Jake looked up from his device. His brown eyes were steady and calm. I think we should look at our options, he said simply. Our options? Yushan's voice was sharp. We have no options. We run or we die. There are always options, Jake said. He went back to his notes. The hologram changed. Now it showed the Devak fleet in detail. Their ships were huge and black. They looked like metal sharks swimming through space. Each ship had weapons that could destroy cities. The flagship was twice the size of Aurora Prime. They broadcast surrender demands before every battle, Sexter explained. It is part of their strategy. They want their enemies to be afraid before the fighting starts. It works, Mortek said sadly. Everyone knows about the Devak. Everyone is afraid of them. Fear is a weapon, Jake said quietly. But it only works if you let it. The other commanders stared at him. What did that mean? How could you not let fear work? The Devak had destroyed 17 star systems. How could anyone not be afraid? The Devak will be here in 4 days, Sexter continued. We need to decide what to do. Do we evacuate the colonies? Do we make a stand? Do we try to negotiate? Negotiate with what? Yushan asked. They have almost 9 times as many ships as we do. Numbers are not everything, Jake said. He was still writing on his device. What else is there? General Vexka asked. We have weapons. They have bigger weapons. We have armor. They have better armor. We have brave soldiers. They have more soldiers. Jake finally stopped writing. He looked around the table at each commander. They all watched him carefully. The human's face showed no fear, no anger, no panic. He looked like he was solving a puzzle. I need 72 hours, Jake said. For what? Sexter asked. To present an alternative strategy. What kind of alternative? Yu Shan demanded. The kind that might work, Jake replied. The room fell silent again. The alien commanders looked at each other. What could one human possibly come up with that their combined military minds could not? What did he see that they did not? This is foolish, Commander Jean said. We are wasting time. Time we do not have, General Vexka added. But Admiral Sexter was thinking. He had seen humans fight before. They did not think like other species. They did strange things that somehow worked. Maybe the human had an idea worth hearing. 72 hours, Sexter said finally. But if your plan is not good, we evacuate immediately. Jake nodded, understood. He stood up and walked toward the door. As he left, he looked back at the worried faces around the table. Admiral, he said to Sexter, in 72 hours, I will show you how to make the Devak afraid of us. Door closed behind him. The other commanders sat in stunned silence. Make the Devak afraid? That was impossible. The Devak were the ones who made others afraid. They were the monsters in the dark that made entire civilizations surrender without a fight. But something about the humans' calm confidence made them wonder. What if the quiet human knew something they did not? What if there was a way to turn? The tables on the most feared enemy in the galaxy? Admiral Sexter dismissed the meeting, but he could not stop thinking about Jake Morrison's words. In 3 days, they would either have hope, or they would begin the largest evacuation in Galactic history. The human had been quiet during the briefing. That was strange. But maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what they needed. Jake Morrison walked through the long corridors of Aurora Prime. Around him, alien crews worked frantically to prepare for battle or evacuation. Some were loading supplies into escape pods. Others were checking weapons that everyone knew would not be enough. The air smelled of fear and metal polish. Jake's destination was Docking Bay 7. The human frigate New York waited there like a small fish next to a whale. The ship was only 300 meters long, tiny compared to the massive alien vessels. But it was home to Jake and his crew. The New York had been built on Luna shipyards 5 years ago. It was not the newest ship in the human fleet, but it was reliable. Jake had served on her for 2 years. He knew every bolt and wire in her hull. More importantly, he knew his crew. Jake entered the ship through the main airlock. The corridors inside were narrow and efficient. Everything was designed for humans, so Jake did not have to duck under pipes or step around equipment made for different body types. It felt good to be in a space built for his species. The ship's common room was small but comfortable. 3 people sat around a metal table, drinking coffee and talking quietly. They looked up when Jake entered. Unlike the panicked aliens outside, these humans looked calm and ready. "How bad is it, boss?" asked Lisa Blake. She was the ship's tactical officer. Lisa was 28 years old, with short red hair and sharp green eyes. She had grown up on Mars colonies, where life was always dangerous. Nothing scared her much anymore. 847 enemy ships, Jake said, sitting down at the table. "We have 90 ships they can fight." "Well, that's not good," said Ryan Torres. He was the communications specialist. Ryan was tall and thin with dark hair and a quick smile. He came from Earth's South American Federation. His job was to make sure all the human ships could talk to each other during battle. "Could be worse," said Katie Brooks, the intelligence analyst. She was the youngest of the group, at 25. Katie had blonde hair and blue eyes behind thick glasses. Her mind worked like a computer, always analyzing data and finding patterns others missed. "How could it be worse?" Lisa asked. "They could have 1,000 ships," Katie replied with a small smile. Jake poured himself a cup of coffee. The hot liquid felt good going down. "The other commanders want to evacuate or surrender." "What do you want to do?" Ryan asked. "I want to win," Jake said simply. The other 3 humans looked at him. They had worked together for 2 years. They trusted Jake completely. If he said they could win, they would believe him until proven wrong. "Okay," Lisa said. "How do we beat 800 ships with 90? "We don't," Jake replied. "We beat them with 1 ship. Ours." Katie leaned forward. "Explain." Jake pulled out his datapad and placed it on the table. A hologram appeared showing the Devak fleet. The black ships moved in perfect formation, like a school of deadly fish. "The Devak Empire wins battles before they start," Jake said. "They broadcast surrender demands. They show their huge fleet. They make their enemies afraid. Most species give up without fighting. But that's not how they beat 17 star systems," Ryan pointed out. "Some of those places must have fought back." "They did," Jake agreed, "but they fought scared. When you're afraid, you make mistakes. You think about losing instead of winning. The Devak count on that." Katie was studying the hologram carefully. "Their ships are built for intimidation. Look at those designs. They're made to look scary, not to be efficient." "Exactly," Jake said. "They prioritize fear over function. That's a weakness." Lisa crossed her arms. "So what? We're not afraid of them. That still doesn't give us 800 more ships." "No," Jake said, "but it gives us something better. It gives us surprise." The humans around the table grew quiet. They were thinking hard about what Jake meant. This was how the crew worked best. Jake would present an idea, and they would help him develop it. "The Devak expect their enemies to be afraid," Jake continued. "They expect desperate defensive actions. They expect surrender or retreat. What they don't expect is confidence." "You want to attack them?" Ryan asked. "I want to make them afraid of us," Jake said. Katie's eyes lit up behind her glasses. "A psychological operation. Turn their own tactics against them." "But how?" Lisa asked. "We still only have 90 ships." Jake smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who had found prey. "We make them think we have something they don't know about. Something dangerous." "Like what?" Ryan asked. "Like humans," Jake said. The crew spent the next hour discussing ideas. Jake explained his theory about human psychology. Humans had evolved differently from other species. Most aliens developed in stable environments with predictable threats. Humans came from a planet where everything tried to kill them in new and creative ways. Earth made us paranoid, Jake said. We always think about what could go wrong. We plan for disasters. We expect the unexpected. Other species don't think that way? Katie asked. Not like we do, Jake replied. They're more specialized, better at specific things, but humans are generalists. We adapt, we improvise. We see patterns others miss. Lisa was beginning to understand. So we do something they can't predict because they don't think like us. Right, Jake said. We use our greatest advantage. Which is? Ryan asked. We're crazy, Jake said with a grin. The crew laughed. It was true in a way. Humans did things that seemed insane to other species. They took risks that made aliens nervous. They found solutions in places others never looked. So what's the plan? Lisa asked. Jake pulled up a new hologram. This one showed the Kepler system. 4 planets orbited a yellow star. 3 of them had human colonies. The 4th was a gas giant with several moons. We're going to use the Devik's confidence against them, Jake said. They think they know how this battle will go. They think we'll run or make a desperate last stand. Instead, we're going to give them a mystery. What kind of mystery? Katie asked. The kind that makes them hesitate, Jake replied. The kind that makes them second-guess themselves. The kind that makes them afraid. Over the next 6 hours, the crew worked out the details. They ran computer simulations. They studied Devak battle tactics. They looked for weaknesses in ships designed to intimidate rather than fight efficiently. Katie discovered something interesting in the enemy ship designs. Look at this, she said, pointing to the hologram. Their armor is impressive, but it's not practical. They sacrificed protection for appearance. What do you mean? Lisa asked. They wanted their ships to look scary, Katie explained. So they made them big and black and angular. But that design has weak points. Places where the armor is thin because it looks better that way. Ryan found another weakness. Their communication systems are centralized. If we could disrupt their command ship, the whole fleet would have trouble coordinating. Lisa studied their weapons. They have powerful guns, but they're not designed for precision. They're designed for destroying cities and space stations. Against small, fast targets, they might have trouble. Jake listened to his crew's discoveries. Each piece of information was useful. Together, they painted a picture of an enemy that was strong but not invincible. Dangerous, but not unstoppable. We have 72 hours, Jake said finally. That's enough time to set up our surprise. Are you going to tell the other commanders about this? Ryan asked. Not yet, Jake replied. They need to see it work first. If I tell them now, they'll try to stop me. The crew understood. Alien commanders thought differently than humans. They would see Jake's plan as too risky. They would want to stick to conventional tactics that had a low chance of success rather than try something new that might work. All right, Lisa said. Let's get started. The humans went to work. They had 3 days to prepare something that had never been tried before. 3 days to turn the tables on the most feared enemy in the galaxy. Outside, the alien crews continued their desperate preparations. They loaded evacuation ships and checked weapons they knew would not be enough. They sent messages to their families, saying goodbye just in case. But on the New York, 4 humans worked with quiet confidence. They were not preparing to lose. They were preparing to win in a way that would surprise everyone, including themselves. The Devak Empire was about to learn why humans were the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. 72 hours had passed quickly. Jake Morrison stood in the same briefing room where he had been quiet 3 days ago. Now all the alien commanders watched him with curious eyes. They wanted to hear his plan, but they also expected to be disappointed. Admiral Zexter sat with his 4 blue arms crossed. "Well, Morrison, what is this alternative strategy you promised us?" Jake activated the hologram projector. The image of the Kepler system appeared above the table. The gas giant Kepler-7 glowed softly in the display. Its rings and moons sparkled, like jewels around a giant pearl. "We make our stand here," Jake said, pointing to the gas giant. At Kepler-7, the room exploded with angry voices. Commander Yushan hissed like an angry snake. "That is suicide. We will be trapped between the planet and the enemy fleet." "There is no escape route," General Vexka said. Her 6 legs clicked nervously on the floor. "If we position ourselves there, we cannot retreat." "Exactly," Jake said calmly. Captain Mortek's yellow glow flickered with confusion. "You want us to trap ourselves? That makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense," Jake replied, "if you think like the enemy." Admiral Zexther leaned forward. "Explain." Jake changed the hologram. Now it showed battle formations and ship movements. "The Devek expect us to run or make a defensive stand in open space. They expect us to try to protect the colonies directly. They do not expect us to position ourselves where we cannot escape." "Because it is insane," Yushan said coldly. "Because it is unexpected," Jake corrected. "The Devak have studied our previous battles. They know how we normally fight. They have plans for every standard tactic we might use, but they have no plan for this." Katie Brooks stepped forward from where she had been standing quietly behind. "Jake, Commander Morrison asked me to analyze Devak battle records. In every fight, they use the same approach. They surround the enemy, broadcast surrender demands, then attack when their opponents are demoralized. That is what they will do to us," General Vexka said. "Yes," Jake agreed. "But this time, we will be ready for it." Jake changed the hologram. Again. Now it showed the Allied fleet in a strange formation around Kepler-7. The ships were positioned at specific points around the gas giant's orbit. "This looks like a desperate last stand," Ryan Torres said from his position near the door. "That is exactly what we want them to think." Lisa Blake moved to stand beside the hologram. "While they are setting up to surround us, we will be setting up something else." The alien commanders looked confused. What could 90 ships do against 800? What trick could possibly work against such overwhelming odds? Jake touched his data pad. The hologram zoomed in on several ships in the formation. "These vessels will be crewed by volunteers only. They are not warships. They are delivery systems." "Delivery systems for what?" Admiral Zexther asked. "For the biggest surprise the Devak Empire has ever seen," Jake replied. Commander Yushan stood up angrily. "Stop speaking in riddles, human. Tell us your plan." Jake looked around the room at each alien face. They were all scared, confused, and desperate. They needed hope, but they also needed to believe in something concrete. "The Devek use fear as a weapon," Jake said. "They make their enemies afraid before the battle starts. But fear works both ways. If we can make them afraid of us, they will make mistakes. How do we make them afraid?" Captain Mortek asked. "They have 800 ships. We show them something they do not understand," Jake replied. "Something that makes them think we know something they do not." Katie activated another hologram. This one showed technical specifications for fusion charges. "These are mining explosives. We use them to break apart asteroids. Each one is equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. You want to use mining charges." "As weapons?" General Vexka asked. "Not as weapons," Jake said. "As tools." Lisa pointed to the gas giant in the display. "Kepler-7 is mostly hydrogen and helium. Under the right conditions, those gases can undergo fusion reactions." The alien commanders stared at the humans. Slowly, understanding began to dawn on their faces. What the humans were suggesting was impossible. It was insane. It was also brilliant. "You want to turn the planet into a bomb," Admiral Zexter said. Quietly. "Not a bomb," Jake corrected. "A star." For about 30 seconds, the room fell completely silent. Even the ship's ventilation system seemed to stop making noise. The alien commanders tried to process what they had just heard. "That is impossible," Yushan said finally. "No," Katie replied. "It is just very difficult and very dangerous. The fusion reaction will only last for a short time," Lisa explained. "But it will create a massive electromagnetic pulse. Every unshielded ship in the system will lose power." "Including ours," General Vexka pointed out. "No," Ryan said. "We will be protected. Our ships will be positioned behind specially modified deflector screens. The Devek ships will not have that protection." Jake activated the final part of his presentation. The hologram showed the Devek fleet surrounding the gas giant, confident in their victory. Then it showed the moment of the fusion reaction. The gas giant blazed like a newborn star, sending waves of energy across space. "The Devek ships are designed to look intimidating," Jake explained. "They sacrificed practical shielding for impressive appearance. When the electromagnetic pulse hits them, their systems will fail." "How long will they be disabled?" Admiral Zexter asked. "Long enough," Jake replied. "Long enough for us to disable their weapons and capture their command ships." Commander Jun was thinking hard. This plan requires perfect timing. If the charges detonate too early or too late, it will not work. If we are in the wrong position when it happens, we will be destroyed along with them, General Vexka added. "If the fusion reaction is stronger than expected, it could destroy the entire system," Captain Mortek said. Jake nodded. "All of that is true. This plan is dangerous. It might not work, but it is the only plan that gives us a chance to win." The alien commanders looked at each other. They were military officers trained to consider all options. Jake's plan was risky, but it was also the only plan that did not guarantee defeat. "Why did you not tell us about this 3 days ago?" Admiral Zexter asked. "Because you would have said no," Jake replied honestly. "You would have wanted to study it for months. You would have wanted to run simulations and get approval from your governments. We do not have months. We have hours." "The Devek fleet will arrive in 16 hours, Sean said. "Then we need to move now," Jake said. "Every ship needs to be in position before they get here. The volunteer crews need to be briefed. The fusion charges need to be prepared and loaded." Admiral Zexter stood up. His forearms moved as he thought about the decision. The other commanders watched him, waiting for his choice. "This is the most insane plan I have ever heard," Zexter said finally. "It violates every principle of military tactics. It depends on luck and timing and the enemy making mistakes." Jake said nothing. He had made his presentation. Now the aliens had to decide whether to trust him. "It is also the only plan that treats the Devek fleet as if it can be defeated," Zexter continued. "Every other option assumes we will lose." The Admiral looked around the room at his fellow commanders. "I vote to try the humans' plan. All in favor?" One by one, the alien commanders raised their hands or tentacles, or whatever they used to vote. Even Commander Yishan, who had been the most skeptical, finally voted yes. "It is decided," Admiral Zexter said. "We will make our stand at Kepler 7. Morrison, you will coordinate the operation. The rest of us will prepare our ships and crews." As the meeting broke up, Jake felt a hand on his shoulder. Admiral Zexter was looking at him with respect and concern. "Human," the Admiral said quietly, "I hope you know what you are doing." Jake smiled. "So do I, Admiral. So do I." The alien commanders left the room, talking quietly among themselves. They were still scared, But now they were also excited. For the first time in days, they had hoped. Jake remained in the briefing room, looking at the hologram of Kepler-7. In a few hours, that peaceful gas giant would become the center of the most important battle in galactic history. The Devek Empire was coming, confident in their inevitable victory. They had no idea that they were about to face the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait. The Devek fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system. 847 black ships appeared like a swarm of metal insects against the stars. Each vessel was massive and threatening, designed to make enemies surrender at first sight. On the bridge of the flagship destroyer of worlds, Commander Vorthak studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. The alien had gray skin covered in ritual scars that showed his many victories. His red eyes gleamed as he looked at the pathetic enemy formation. "Report," Vorthak commanded. His voice was deep and cold. "The enemy fleet is positioned around the gas giant Kepler-7, reported his tactical officer. 93 ships total. They appear to be in defensive formation." Vorthak laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "They have trapped themselves. How foolish. They cannot escape from that position." "Should we broadcast the surrender demand now, Commander?" asked his communications officer. "Not yet," Vorthak replied. "Let them see our full fleet first. Let them count our ships and realize how hopeless their situation is." The Devek fleet moved through space in perfect formation. They had done this hundreds of times before. The pattern was always the same. Show overwhelming force. Demand surrender. Destroy any ships that refuse to submit. On the New York, Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet approach. His crew stood quietly around him on the small bridge. Outside the viewports, other Allied ships held their positions around Kepler-7. "They're taking their time," Lisa Blake observed. "Very confident." "Good," Jake replied. "Confident enemies make mistakes." Katie Brooks was monitoring multiple sensor readings. "The volunteer ships are in position. All fusion charges are loaded and ready. Communication channels are clear," Ryan Torres reported. "All ships are maintaining radio silence as ordered." Jake nodded. Everything was going according to plan so far. The Devek were behaving exactly as expected. They saw what appeared to be a desperate last stand and were moving to surround it. "Admiral?" Zexther's voice came through a private channel. "Morrison, are you sure about this?" "As sure as I can be," Jake replied quietly. "Remember, no matter what happens, do not break formation until I give the signal." On the destroyer of worlds, Commander Vorthak was enjoying the view. The enemy ships looked small and helpless around the gas giant. Some were human vessels. Others belonged to various alien species. All of them would be destroyed or captured within the hour. "Tactical analysis complete," reported his science officer. "The enemy formation is purely defensive. They have no escape routes. This will be a simple matter." "Any unusual readings?" Vorthak asked. "Nothing significant," the science officer replied. "Some of their ships have modified deflector screens, but that will not help them." "Deploy the fleet," Vorthak commanded. "Standard encirclement pattern. I want them surrounded completely before we begin." The massive Devek fleet began to spread out. Like a giant net closing around fish, the ships moved to surround Kepler-7 and the trapped Allied forces. It would take 30 minutes for all ships to reach their positions. Jake watched the enemy movement on his tactical display. The Devek were doing exactly what he had hoped. They were so confident of victory that they were not looking for traps. "Enemy fleet is moving into position," Lisa reported. "They'll have us completely surrounded in 25 minutes. "Perfect." Jake said, "Katie, are the charges ready?" "All fusion charges are armed and synchronized," Katie confirmed. "The volunteer crews report," ready for deployment. Jake opened a channel to the volunteer ships. These were brave crews who had accepted the most dangerous part of the mission. They would pilot their ships into the gas giant's upper atmosphere and deploy the fusion charges at precise locations. "Volunteer teams, this is Morrison," Jake said. "You know what you're doing is the most important job in this battle. The entire galaxy is counting on you." "We understand, Commander," came the reply from Captain Peters on the mining ship Denver. "We're ready." The volunteer ships began to move. There were 12 of them, converted mining vessels and cargo haulers. They looked like they were making a desperate attack run on the Devak fleet. That was exactly what Jake wanted the enemy to think. Commander Vorthak noticed the movement immediately. "Some of their ships are moving," he reported to his tactical. "Officer, suicide attack," the officer replied without concern. "Should we destroy them?" "Not yet," Vorthak said. "Let them get closer. I want them to see how useless their attack is before we destroy them." The volunteer ships flew toward the Devak fleet, but then suddenly changed course. Instead of attacking the enemy ships, they dove into the upper atmosphere of Kepler-7. One by one, they disappeared into the swirling clouds of hydrogen and helium. "What are they doing?" the tactical officer asked, confused. "Hiding in the gas." "Giant," Vorthak replied with amusement. "They think the atmosphere will protect them from our weapons." How naive. But Jake was not hiding his ships. He was positioning them. Each volunteer vessel carried fusion charges calibrated to detonate at specific depths within the gas giant's atmosphere. The charges had to be placed exactly right for the yin. "Plan to work. First ship in position," Katie reported. "Charges deployed successfully." "Second ship confirming deployment," came another report. One by one, volunteer ships completed their missions. They flew deep into Kepler-7's atmosphere, released their fusion charges, then tried to escape before the atmosphere crushed their ship's dot. Not all of them made it out. The gas giant's gravity and pressure destroyed 3 of the volunteer vessels. But their crews had completed their missions. The charges were in place. "All charges deployed," Katie reported. "Detonation sequence can begin on your command." Jake looked at his tactical display. The Devak fleet was almost in position. In 5 more minutes, they would have the Allied forces completely surrounded. It was time. "Open a communication channel." "To the Devak flagship," Jake ordered. Ryan Torres looked surprised. "Sir?" "Do it," Jake said firmly. The main viewer showed Commander Vorthak on his bridge. The Devak commander looked pleased with himself. Behind him, his crew worked efficiently. "To coordinate the encirclement." "I am Commander Vorthak of the Devak Empire," the alien said. "You are completely surrounded. Surrender now and some of you may be allowed to live as slaves." Jake smiled calmly. "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the human fleet. I have a counteroffer." Vorthak laughed harshly. "You are in no position to make offers, human. You have 90 ships. I have 800. Surrender or be destroyed." "You're right about one thing," Jake said. "We are not in a position to make offers. We're in a position to make demonstrations." "What are you talking about?" Vorthak demanded. Jake's smile grew wider. "Tell me, Commander, what do you know about humans?" "I know you are weak and will be easy to defeat," Vorthak replied. "We are weak," Jake agreed. "We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the fastest or the smartest or the most advanced. But we have one thing that makes us very dangerous." "And what is that?" Vorthak asked with contempt. "We're unpredictable," Jake said. "We do things that other species think are impossible. Or insane. Sometimes both." "Your words mean nothing," Vorthak snarled. "Surrender now or face destruction." "No," Jake said quietly. "You surrender, or face something you've never seen before." Vorthak's red eyes narrowed. You threaten me? With what? Your pathetic fleet? Jake looked directly into the Devek commander's eyes. With a star, Commander. I'm threatening you with a star. Before Vorthak could respond, Jake cut the communication. He turned to Katie Brooks. Begin the detonation sequence, he ordered. Katie's fingers moved over her control panel. Deep inside Kepler-7, the fusion charges activated in perfect synchronization. The carefully placed explosives began a chain reaction in the gas giants. Hydrogen-rich atmosphere. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The gas giant looked the same as it had moments before. The Devek fleet continued moving into position, unaware that anything had changed. Then Kepler-7 began to glow. The glow started as a faint brightening of the planet's surface. Then it grew stronger, brighter, the hydrogen and helium in the upper atmosphere began to fuse, creating the same nuclear reactions that powered stars. For 30 seconds, Kepler-7 became a miniature sun. The electromagnetic pulse that followed lit up space like a giant lightning bolt. It spread out from the gas giant at the speed of light, washing over every ship in the system. The Allied fleet, protected by their modified deflector screens, rode out the pulse safely. Their systems flickered but remained operational. The Devek fleet was not so lucky. 847 ships suddenly went dark. Their engines stopped. Their weapons powered down. Their life support systems failed. The electromagnetic pulse overloaded every unshielded circuit in their hulls. In the space of 30 seconds, the most feared fleet in the galaxy became 800 helpless pieces of floating metal. On the destroyer of worlds, emergency lighting cast red shadows across the bridge. Commander Vorthak stood in shocked silence, trying to understand what had just happened. Report, he shouted. All systems offline, his engineering officer replied. Main power is gone. Weapons are down. Engines are not responding. How is this possible? Vorthak demanded. His science officer looked up from a handheld scanner. The gas giant, sir. Somehow they turned it into a fusion reactor. The electromagnetic pulse from the react. 6 hours after the battle, the Allied fleet had secured most of the Devek ships. Boarding parties moved through dark corridors, finding confused and frightened enemy crews. The soldiers who had seemed so threatening were now helpless without. Their weapons and technology. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Destroyer of Worlds. The massive ship that had led the Devek fleet was now under Allied control. Emergency power provided dim lighting, and the air smelled of burned electronics and defeat. Commander Vorthak sat in a chair, his hands bound behind his back. The gray-skinned alien stared at Jake with a mixture of hatred and confusion. His red eyes showed something Jake had never expected to see in a Devek warrior. Fear. I do not understand, Vorthak said quietly. How did you know it would work? Jake looked out at the stars through the main view screen. Kepler-7 hung in space, looking normal again, as if it had never been a temporary star. Only the disabled fleet around it showed that something extraordinary had happened. I didn't know, Jake admitted. I hoped it would work, but I didn't know for certain. You risked everything on hope? Vorthak asked. Sometimes hope is all you have, Jake replied. Sometimes it's enough. Admiral Zexter entered the bridge with several armed guards. The Kethany commander looked tired but relieved. His 4 blue arms moved as he spoke. Morrison, we have secured 612 enemy ships, Zexter reported. The rest were too damaged by the electromagnetic pulse to be salvaged. We captured over 200,000 prisoners. Any casualties on our side? Jake asked. 17. People died when their volunteer ships were crushed in the gas giant's atmosphere, Zexter replied sadly. But they saved billions of lives today, Jake nodded. Those 17 brave souls had known the risks when they volunteered. They had chosen to sacrifice themselves so others could live. He would make sure their names were remembered. What do? We do with all these prisoners? Admiral Zexter asked. We send them home, Jake said simply. Both Vorthak and Zexter stared at him in surprise. You are releasing us? Vorthak asked. Not all of you, Jake clarified. The war criminals and fleet commanders will face trial, but the ordinary soldiers and crew members will be allowed to return to Devek space. Why? Vorthak demanded. We came here to destroy your people. We have conquered 17 star systems. We have killed billions. Jake turned to face the Devek commander. Because that's what humans do. We fight when we have to, but we also show mercy when we can. The Devek Empire will not understand mercy, Vorthak said. They will see it as weakness. Then they will make the same mistake you did, Jake replied. They will underestimate us. Lisa Blake entered the bridge carrying a datapad. Commander, we finished analyzing the Devek ship databases. You're going to want to see this. Jake took the datapad and read the information. His eyebrows rose in surprise. Katie was right. These ships really were designed for intimidation rather than fighting. What do you mean? Admiral Zexter asked. Their armor is decorative, Jake explained. It looks impressive, but provides minimal protection. Their weapons are powerful, but inaccurate. Their engines are fast, but fragile. The whole fleet was built to scare enemies into surrendering. It worked for a long time, Vorthak said bitterly. Against species who thought conventionally, Jake agreed. But humans don't think conventionally. Ryan Torres approached the group. Commander, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. News of the victory is spreading fast. What kind of response are we getting? Jake asked. Mixed, Ryan replied. Some species are celebrating. Others are worried about what humans might do with this much power. Jake sighed. He had expected this reaction. Humans had just proven they could defeat the most feared military force in known space. That would make some people nervous. Admiral Zexter, I want you to send a message to all member governments, Jake said. Tell them that humans have no interest in conquest or empire. We want the same thing we've always wanted, peace and the right to exist freely. Will they believe that? Zexter asked. Some will, Jake replied. Others will need time to learn that humans are different from the Devek. Katie Brooks entered the bridge with a puzzled expression. Commander, I've been analyzing the Devek. Battle records. Something doesn't make sense. What is it? Jake asked. According to their own files, the Devek Empire has never actually fought a real war, Katie explained. Every conquest was achieved through intimidation and psychological warfare. When enemies surrendered without fighting, the Devek claimed victory. You mean they've never faced serious resistance? Lisa asked. Not once, Katie confirmed. Every species they encountered either surrendered immediately or was too weak to pose a real threat. Jake looked at Commander Vorthak with new understanding. Your people aren't warriors at all, are they? You're bullies. Vorthak's red eyes flashed with anger, but he said nothing. That's why this worked so well, Jake continued. You had no experience dealing with an enemy who fought back creatively. You only knew how to intimidate weaker opponents. What will happen to my people now? Vorthak asked quietly. That depends on them, Jake replied. If they want to continue their aggressive expansion, they'll find that other species are no longer afraid of them. Word of this defeat will spread. The Devek Empire's reputation for invincibility is broken. And if we choose a different path, then humanity will be willing to discuss peace, Jake said. We don't want to destroy your empire. We just want you to stop destroying others. Admiral Zexter received a communication on his personal device. Morrison, the Galactic Council is requesting an immediate meeting. They want to discuss the implications of this victory. Tell them I'll attend, Jake said. But first, I want to visit the families of the 17 people who died today. They deserve to hear about their loved one's sacrifice from me personally. That will take days, Zexter pointed out. Then the council can wait, Jake replied firmly. Politics can wait. Those families cannot. As Jake prepared to leave the bridge, Commander Vorthek called out to him. Human, the Devek said. Answer me one question. Jake turned back. What? In the briefing, when the other commanders were discussing conventional tactics, why did you remain silent? Jake smiled slightly. Because I was thinking. About what? About how to turn your greatest strength into your greatest weakness, Jake replied. Your intimidation tactics worked because species feared you, but fear is just another emotion. And emotions can be manipulated, so you manipulated us? I gave you exactly what you expected to see, Jake said. A desperate enemy making a last stand in a hopeless position. You were so confident in your superiority that you never considered we might be setting a trap. And the gas giant? Was just a tool, Jake explained, like any other weapon. The difference is that humans see weapons where others see empty space. Jake walked toward the door, then paused. You know what the real irony is, Commander? What? If you had simply asked the colonies to surrender, many of them probably would have agreed to avoid bloodshed. But you came with threats and violence. You forced us to fight. And when humans fight, we fight to win. As Jake left the bridge, Commander Vorthek sat in stunned silence. The human had been right about everything. The Devek had defeated themselves through their own arrogance and overconfidence. 3 days later, Jake Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the New York, writing his official report. The document was brief and understated, typical of human military. Reports. Enemy psychological warfare rendered ineffective through superior tactical application, he wrote. Devek expansion permanently halted. Allied casualties minimal. Mission successful. He paused in his writing and looked out the viewport. The stars looked the same as they always had, but something had changed in the galaxy. For the first time in years, species across known space could sleep without fear of the Devek Empire. Jake's communication device chimed. It was a message from Admiral Zexter. Morrison, the Galactic Council has reached a decision. They want to establish a new defense alliance with human tactical leadership. Are you interested? Jake thought about it for a moment. Leading a galactic defense force would be a huge responsibility. It would mean spending years in space, far from Earth and his family. But it would also mean protecting billions of innocent people from threats like the Devok. Empire.Jake typed his reply. Send me the details. Outside his viewport, the stars twinkled peacefully. But Jake Morrison knew that peace was something that had to be defended. And humans, it turned out, were very good at defending things. The quiet human had spoken, and the galaxy had listened.